the first of New Who's big two-part season finales. Most of these involve aliens invading present-day Earth, but in 2005 that was left until the Christmas special. Instead, we get a sequel to The Long Game, starting with TV parodies and ending with a massive Dalek battle. It feels like Russell T Davies is throwing out every idea in his head in one final dreamlike explosion of creativity. It shouldn't work, but somehow it does. The opening scene feels like a comic relief sketch, with the Doctor waking up in the Big Brother house, with the familiar music playing at full volume. Big Brother wasn't even on the BBC, so this was really surreal at the time. I was still watching it in 2005, so I could appreciate all the references Russell T Davies put in, like them saying it's only a game show, and the rituals around eviction. It shows that he's definitely a fan. And Big Brother is technically still going, although I haven't watched it in years, so for all I know, they could be killing off evicted contestants already. Meanwhile, Rose is all the weakest link. This is also still going, but with a different host and a less hostile feel. This version does capture Anne Robinson's trademark style of unnecessarily personal insults, which made her an international star. It's fun to see that Rose is really enjoying herself to start with, until she realises that the losers get zapped into oblivion. It's kind of like The Running Man, as a satire of how game shows in the future might raise the stakes. Captain Jack is on What Not to Wear. This was a popular show in 2005, but it was cancelled shortly afterwards, so this part has not aged well. It's really just an excuse for Jack to strip off and pull a gun out of his bottom, and possibly the closest John Barrowman comes to playing himself. When the Doctor escapes from the Big Brother house, he finds that he's back on Satellite 5 from The Long Game, which gives them an excuse to reuse all the sets. Of course, the classic series did the same trick with The Ark in Space and Revenge of the Cybermen. He's joined by Jo Joyner as Linda, who feels like a potential companion. She's intelligent and curious and has a great chemistry with the Doctor. She's a very sympathetic character, so it does feel tragic when she dies in part 2. Although the actress did go on to star in EastEnders and other shows, so she had a decent career anyway. The Doctor and Jack race to rescue Rose, but shockingly the android zaps her into a pile of ash. I totally forgot this part, so I was quite surprised even now. So any kids watching it at the time would definitely have been fooled. And it takes several minutes before they finally reveal that she actually survived, which is a really great twist. At first it seems like the villain of the episode might be the controller. We have the cool visual of her hooked up to a load of wires, looking really freaky, but at the end it turns out the Daleks are back, which would have been a big surprise if they hadn't been shown at the end of the previous week's trailer. The climax ties it all back to Big Brother, as the Doctor says Davina's catchphrase, "I'm coming to get you," although it might have worked better if she'd actually said it earlier in the episode. The visual effects are impressive for the time, with Dalek ships filling the screen and hundreds of Daleks flying about. It's a quantum leap away from the old Dalek stories, when there were only 2 or 3 of them trundling about the studio floor, and it really helps to provide the necessary sense of scale. We never actually see them attack Earth, we just hear about it, but we do see them invade Satellite 5, where they basically slaughter every single guest character, including Captain Jack. So it's a massive body count, and it does a lot to establish them as a major threat. In charge of them is an Emperor Dalek, which is absolutely huge. It's probably just a model, but it is very effective. And he's not just any old Dalek, as he's gone insane after surviving the Time War, and now believes himself to be God. It's a really weird choice, but he does have some solid exchanges with the Doctor, taunting him about his plan to wipe out every single living being in the system, and preying on his guilt from the Time War, until we finally get Eccleston's triumphant line, "Coward every time." For the whole season he's been wrestling with his guilt from the Time War, and this feels like the moment where he finally puts it behind him. Meanwhile, Rose has been sent home in the TARDIS, and the contrast between the futuristic space station and the mundanity of the Powell estate is striking. Billie Piper has some really strong scenes here. Rose is shell-shocked at having to return to her everyday life, and there's a very emotional scene where she tells Jackie about the events of Father's Day. Eventually she realises that Bad Wolf was a message from her future self, so she opens up the TARDIS, looks into the time vortex, and becomes a god. I'm still not entirely sure how the words Bad Wolf were enough to point her towards doing that, but somehow it worked. This is a literal Deus Ex Machina ending, as Rose disintegrates all of the Daleks and resurrects Captain Jack. I'm sure that won't have any unintended consequences. The whole relationship between the Doctor and Rose has been leading to this point, She basically sacrifices herself to save him, and then he sucks the time vortex out of her, knowing that it will kill him instead. And it works on multiple levels. It's their first kiss, so it's played as a big romantic moment. Although the age gap between the actors means their chemistry hasn't felt that romantic up to this point. But at the same time, he's also giving his life to save hers. And their final TARDIS scene together is full of emotion. The Doctor tries to be his usual cheerful self, but he's much more manic than usual, until he finally breaks down and has to tell her about regeneration. His last words are just perfect. "You were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic." And you know what? So was I. And then we get the first of the New Look regeneration scenes, which goes on for about half as long as they would end up being. It would have been amazing if they'd managed to keep the regeneration secret, but sadly the news of David Tennant taking over had leaked many weeks earlier. Still, it does end the season on a high note, with one story over, but a new one just beginning. The DVD has 2 episodes of Doctor Who Confidential. The first one shows the performer inside the android, which I always thought was just a robot. We see an exhibition in Brighton, with kids excited about seeing a Dalek and the Slovene, so that must have been recorded just a few weeks earlier. Both Russell T Davies and John Barrowman complain that the BBC wouldn't let them show Jack's naked bottom, which sounds a bit naive. They were never going to be allowed to do that in a pre-watershed show. But we do see a pixelated version of the scene for anyone who's curious. Episode 2 is mainly just montages of scenes from the season, plus Russell T Davies talks about the Doctor's survival guilt from the Time War and how facing the Daleks was therapy for him. But there's nothing about Eccleston leaving or Tennant taking over. There's also 2 commentary tracks. Bad Wolf has the dream team of Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson. They talk about meeting Anne Robinson. Russell comments how he thought the droids looked rubbish. Everyone praises Joe Joyner and Billie Piper. And Russell explains why they put the Daleks in the trailer, as they needed the boost in ratings, even though it ruined the surprise. Parting of the Ways has Julie Gardner with Billie Piper and John Barrowman. Billie is watching it for the first time and marvels at the CGI. Barrowman talks about how he kissed Chris and Billie both the same way, until the final take, where he snogged Christopher Eccleston and wrestled him to the floor, which might explain why the two of them haven't worked together since. Julie praises the Hollow Doctor scene, and Barrowman tries to explain the Bad Wolf story. And they mention recording a fake ending where Rose died instead. I don't think that's ever been released. Overall, it's an excellent end to the season, going from reality TV satire to blockbuster science fiction, and there's a highly emotional ending for anyone who's been following the characters. I'll give it 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my reviews, then you may want to check out my Patreon, where you can read my reviews of 7th Doctor novels and 8th Doctor audios, among other things. Next week on this channel, as is traditional, after finishing One Doctor's era, I'll be looking back at Christopher Eccleston's time as the Doctor and ranking all of his stories. Yes, all 10 of them. So please subscribe if you don't want to miss that, and I'll see you next time.